My guest today is one of my closest friends and a wonderful colleague, AJ Fox. AJ is the founder of wholehearted.org, which I look forward to talking a lot more about. Welcome to the Element Q podcast. I'm your host, TJ Woodward, and I'm thrilled to have you join us for this empowering journey. Each week, we shine a light on the authors, thought leaders, therapists, coaches, and healers of all types who are making a difference in the LGBTQ plus community. Together, we honor those who came before us, the courageous and resilient trailblazers who stood for our rights and recognition. Their strength laid the foundation we stand on today. Here, we celebrate their legacy by diving into the stories, insights, and tools that inspire gentleness, healing, and transformation. So get ready to be uplifted and empowered. This is the Element Q podcast. AJ, welcome to the show.
Thank you, TJ. I don't normally do these things. I always decline requests because I'm shy and I prefer the clarity of writing over fumbling over my own words. But you're a trusted friend and we've done a lot of work together. So I'm excited to be here.
Well, thank you for your yes. I know you prefer to be on the other side of the camera or holding the camera and highlighting other people. And over the years of knowing you, I know that you have so much to share. So I'm actually really grateful, not only for the yes, but also for a kind of a deep dive into this conversation because you and I think about our dinners, I think about our lunches, hours and hours and hours talking about how we support each other and how we support the world in deeper healing. I think I'm going to start with just Wholehearted. I know that when you started wholehearted.org, you started it with a specific reason. And then as you kind of got into it, you realized there was actually some personal benefit for you as well. Let's start there, and then we'll get to the LGBTQ plus healing conversation in a minute.
Sure. I was thinking a little bit before, when you asked me if I would be on your show, how I would describe the founding of Wholehearted. And first, I want to disclose that I have no expertise or background in mental health or wellness or medicine. My background is in investment and financial instruments and due diligence for banks and things like that. However, I do come from a family that believes in giving back. My best friend is like an Eagle Scout. So participating in community or finding ways to help where you see a need is something that's important to me. And many years ago, this kind of started slowly about 20 years ago, and it's ramped up since then. Uh, some friends of mine and people that I'm really close to all had an interest in mental health, kind of what it means for personal growth. And we started getting involved in meeting people like yourself. And I thought, wouldn't it be nice to make multimedia content for individuals that are struggling with addiction? Because it's something I didn't understand. I don't personally have a history of substance use or addiction. And in that process, I started to realize that people struggling with addictions are not different than myself, that their pain and their wounds are the same as my pain and my wounds, maybe a different intensity, maybe it shows up differently. And it did take me a little while, but I came to the realization that we all try and find ways to cope with what's uncomfortable in our lives, what's painful, what's difficult. Uh, and if you have a lot of support and resources, your coping tends to be different than people who don't have that. And I started to move from a sense of judgment to a sense of compassion and seeing a lot of similarities in my own life with other people that I thought were different. And so I wanted to, help others, but really I got as much help out of it as I tried to give.
Well, I love that because that's one of the ways that I know that I'm actually doing something that will be useful when I'm in a project like so many of the projects you and I have done together, and I start to see the benefit in my own life. I sometimes will wake up and say, "Oh, I know what I've been talking about now," right? It's like I'll have a deeper level of awareness of some of the things that I've been working with for years, or months or days or whatever the case may be. So I really appreciate you being so transparent about that because I know that we've had these moments where I've seen you kind of get things in a different way. And I also just want to say thank you. Thank you for, you didn't have to do Wholehearted. You were at a point in your life where it was something that you really wanted to provide as a service, and it has indeed become that. But I also love that it's had personal impact on you. I now do want to kind of pivot. I want to spend some time maybe toward the end of the conversation talking more about wholehearted, but I want to dive into the topic at hand, which is a deeper healing within the LGBTQ plus community. It is such a broad conversation, and there are so many different layers and levels of what we could talk about. When you think about, or when you kind of look at what's happening in the world, what's happening in your own journey, and also what's happening in the people you know. When you think about a deeper healing, what comes to mind for you? I mean, there's so many different layers I know, but I'm curious if there's something that resonates for you when you think about that.
I understood the topic of your podcast, and at first I was uncomfortable because I thought, gosh, what do I have to offer that would be a meaningful contribution? Because I've listened to the episodes, and you've had brilliant people on that have really powerful stories and expertise. Um, the perspective that I have, which might be different, is I don't have a strong perspective on what healing looks like for a particular group of people. What I've spent the last 20 years learning about and experiencing is what we all have in common, despite not necessarily seeing yourself as having something in common with other people that appear different. So my interest and my focus is on what we all share. And so it may not be like the answer people expect or what you're looking for, but that's what I find most interesting and what I feel like I have something to contribute to.
Well, I love that because I actually, as you know, that's the conversation I'm interested in as well. How in my own journey, I think, you and I have talked so often, but I remember being free. I remember being happy. I remember being filled with joy as a very young person. And then a series of events called Life on Planet Earth happened. And I found myself shutting down and closing off and feeling shame and feeling broken, which ultimately led to addiction. And at least a small piece of that was, being a little gay boy in Indiana in the 1970s, growing up, and the messages I received, overt and covert messages that there was something not fundamentally not okay with me. And then as I've done enough of my own healing, there's no finish line to healing, right? I'm always in process, or at least I hope so. But as I've done enough of it, then the conversation starts to be, well, how can I start to see the commonality in all people rather than the differences? And I wonder sometimes if it is part of the journey to like find a community, that has a similar experience. We see that in recovery circles or support groups. We see that in religion. We see that in a lot of different ways people, find their tribe, if you will. And then I think there's a moment where the deeper healing is actually moving beyond that and finding commonality. I mean, in my own journey, I was terrified. Just an example that came up is I was terrified of straight men, just from my own history, from my own like being bullied at school. And so like I shied away from having any kind of friends that were straight men. And then as I did more of my own healing, I'm like, oh, I actually have way more in common with all people than I realized. Is that kind of what you're pointing to? That like the idea of moving beyond the way we see each other is different?
This is why we work together, because you put things so eloquently. Yes, it's your story, which is a common story for people. And I've also, in preparation for doing this episode, I had asked some of my friends about that are LGBT what their experience was, because the experience of being feeling like you don't belong, that your security, your love is conditional on maybe having to be somebody else. I've talked to people who really they waited until they to tell their family until they went to college because they didn't know if they would be kicked out of their home or not. Um, I am about to turn 42. But I have recently had the opportunity to connect with people that I maybe had a connection to 10 or 12 years ago. Um, and hearing stories that like I was one of the people in their life that gave them some guidance or helped them feel safe about who they were or what they were trying to go through. Um, and recognizing how much just it's astonishing to me how little support most people actually need to feel safe and they don't otherwise get.
Mm.
So your story is very powerful, and and you've shared it openly about how it affected how you found love, how you related to yourself, how you navigated relationships, and you've done a lot of work in clearing that out. And it's something I look up to, and that I have my own confusion around sexuality and intimacy and love and worthiness. My experience in my life is my family was very supportive, and my parents are from San Francisco, California. So you know, everybody is who they're allowed to be, and as long as you're not hurting someone else, you're all good, and whatever you are just makes you more interesting. Um, the specifics of my upbringing is not really what I think is important. What I think is important is if people's basic needs are met, they're going to develop in certain predictable ways. And if their needs are not met, they're going to develop in certain predictable ways. And finding a community and finding a group identity can be really helpful for somebody who didn't have their needs met. For someone who did get that support, like myself, I find myself pushing against labels, but that's a privilege I had because I had the support that I needed at the time. But I recognize that most people don't have that, or they don't have the experience and the perception that that's a possibility for them. So the work you do, I think, brings that together. Even though it's like a lot of the work you do is recovery, um, recovery is a part of it, but it's still about a journey of healing and transformation. And the disconnection in those wounds are what drive behavior that might help people feel better in the short term, but the consequences pile up.
Yeah, and I mean, you and I have talked about this a lot, but in early life, we get love and attention, or we don't get love and attention, or we get it in some ways, but not others. And we do develop these wounds, and then we develop these strategies to manage the wounds. For some of us, for me, weed and alcohol came early in life, right around the age 14. Boy, what a relief that was. It actually did help for quite some time. And then it became just the automatic response when, in my life. But I think there's deeper things that happen as well. I mean, another strategy of mine was to just close off. I would go into my room, I would close the door, I would kind of escape into fantasy, and I would just shut out the world. Well, it wasn't until I was well into my recovery and doing therapy and a spiritual journey that I realized that I found myself kind of numbing out when things got difficult, right? Things got intense and I would check out. And it was just an automatic response. It wasn't conscious. Like I wasn't saying, oh, this is too painful, so let me go over here and check out. It was just happening. And so becoming aware of that is such a big part of the journey. And what I always appreciate about what you share and what you just did is like we all find different ways. For some, it might be substance. For some, like mine, it might be shutting down. For others, it might be achieving. A lot of people who feel low sense of self-worth can manage that by achieving. I've done that one, right? And then find ourselves like, why am I not satisfied? The more I accomplish, I'm still not feeling satisfied. So there's just a myriad of different ways, so many different ways that we can manage this. And then ultimately, we come to a point in our life, or I came to a point in my life where I realized I needed to take a look at all my unconscious and automatic strategies so that I could become more conscious about not only healing, but also just having a life that's more connected. And, you know, um, I grew up in a household where, like, in my home, being gay was totally okay. But when I stepped out of that door, for the most part, it wasn't. Ironically, the church I grew up in was the place that was the safest. I had gay role models. It was a very safe thing. So some people get the religious thing, right? There's so many different layers of what one might get. And therefore, we know there's not a one size fits all to people in the LGBTQ plus community. But I do think shame can be a part of it because even if in our own family system, like you talked about your family being accepting, still like, in the media, what it means to be a man. I mean, there's so many layers that cause us to feel shame or feel broken or feel damaged. And I know you and I are very curious about how we help people heal from that.
Yeah, you said a lot of things I completely agree with. I mean, the example of achieving, like that's true in my own life. I spent a lot of my life feeling insecure and working really hard to attain, wealth and the right house and the right stuff and the right security. And so I could hide behind those things. The reality is, this I thought that would make me feel safer, but all it did was push me away from people. And I remember you brought this up. One of our lunches, and this is probably 5 years ago, I made an offhand comment about uh, I have some goal, and once I reach that, I'll be happy. And you seized that moment to say you want to talk about that, you want to examine that. Um, it still stuck with me. Like, yeah, because I keep moving the goalpost, and my happiness really should be detached from achievement.
Yeah.
And I bring that up because, like, from what I've noticed from people in recovery, I know that like a recovery date and how much time somebody has is really important to them. And so I don't mean to diminish that at all, but there seem to be kind of goalposts that are kind of put up for people, and their self-worth and their happiness, and even in some circles, their morality is attached to that. And the work that I try to bring forth with the people that I partner with, like you, is that you are worthy. As long as you're breathing, you're worthy. Um, and healing is always possible. In all instances, maybe curing isn't always possible, but healing is. And it's a process, and it's a process of transformation. And to do that, you need the truth and authenticity. And you've been a reminder of that. And thank you for that.
Oh my gosh, thank you, AJ. And I love what you put together. So I actually do want to take a moment to talk about Wholehearted because you've worked with some amazing people. I sat and watched about an hour of Gabor Mate the other night, and it's the first time in a while that I've just sat down and listened to him. And I think, first of all, so much synchronicity sort of in the work I do and the work he does, but also so honored to be on the same platform as him. And Mark Lundholm is an amazing human, and Dr. Adriana Popescu, and so many different people you have on the platform are people I love and respect. So let's talk a little bit more about it. Not from like a let's have an infomercial, but the why, the deep why that we've done Wholehearted. I mean, you've done it. I've just shown up and done my small part, but I'm curious if we can tell anyone watching or listening right now a little bit more, not only about what wholehearted.org is, but the why of it.
I, well, so what it is today, it's simple. It's a simple website, horta.org, and where people can go and they can watch video programs. And some of these programs can be a one-off special. That's 20, 30 minutes on a topic. And we have a lot of programs that are like series, or what you call master classes. And it bifurcates into two groups. We have content for professionals that work in the field that want continuing education. But what's closer to my heart is the general public self-help content, where we partner with people like yourself, and you mentioned like Gabor Mate, Mark Lundholm, John Bornsenko, just so many people that have so much to offer. And I work with them to produce a body of work that we record. And our team puts a huge amount of effort into making sure that it's polished and high quality. So we're trying to bring these people's hearted wisdom directly to individuals in their living room, in the privacy of their own home, to learn from in a way that's enjoyable to watch at your own pace. Um, that's what it is today. When this started, a very long time ago, I didn't have an idea for an organization or anything like that. I There's a person named Dr. Joan Bornsenko, who she's a best-selling author. She's a pioneer in mind-body medicine. She's a scientist, a psychologist, and kind of a mystic. She's involved in multiple doctoral programs at really prestigious schools. She's worth Googling. Someone gave me a book of hers when I was 20, and the book changed my life. It's not an infomercial for the book, but I discovered other authors that had a meaningful impact on me, and I would buy those books and give them to my friends, and they wouldn't read them. Um, and I think, oh, you should read this book. And I learned that, not everyone likes to read or has the time. And so I discovered YouTube, and I would try and find videos of these people. And a lot of them just didn't have videos, or if there was a video, it was, kind of a shaky camera on a poorly lit stage, and it was an afterthought. And I thought to myself, this is not very honoring of the work, doesn't really show the value of what they have to offer. So as a hobby, side project, passion, uh, I didn't have a background in media, but I figured how hard could it be? Buy a camera and you pointed at someone. Well, it's harder than that. But over time we figured out how to do it and how to do it well. And we started putting that content out. Initially, it was just free, and it was incredibly popular. During the pandemic, we had over 8 million people watch our programs for free, which was fantastic. And then I got hit with a bandwidth bill because I wasn't smart enough to put it on YouTube, and that bandwidth bill had to be paid, and it needed staff, so on and so forth. So we started to kind of turn it into an organization. So that's kind of tells you a little bit about the backstory. But I'll tell you one story that I've only told a few people, and I've never shared in a kind of public forum, which really made a difference for me. And I'll try to get through it. When we were putting this content out and it was free, there was no organization, there was no team or anything in place. It was just something I did, and put it out in the world or in the middle of the pandemic. And I was getting emails and people, oh, how do I watch it? Or thank you for this. And I also had my phone number of like, you can text or call if there's, an issue. And I got a call from somebody who said, I'm homeless. I'm a drug addict. I live in my van. Um, I was planning on doing enough drugs tonight to overdose and die. I don't want to be on this planet anymore. But I do have a phone, and I was scrolling through my feed and I saw something that linked me to your website, and I spent the last 6 hours watching the program you put up, and at least for now, I'm not going to go through with my plans, and I'm going to give it another day. And I saw a phone number on the website, and I just called it and didn't know who would pick up. And this was like at 11 o'clock at night. Um, so we talked about achievement. And so my focus at that point was I want to help people, but I want the content to look good and download well and make a difference. I hadn't really understood who we were reaching and the impact it could have, embarrassingly, until that point. And I felt for a long time, well, who am I to be, the one curating this and producing it and putting it out in the world? I don't have a background in this. Um, but it was obviously needed. And I thought, well, I should rise to the occasion, which is, as you may know, like Wholehearted is personally funded by me, and our goal right now is to just reach sustainability because it helps a lot of people, but we don't sell a lot of stuff because our goal is always to put things out for free, um, and it's growing and people appreciate it. So that's a little bit of the personal backstory of it. It's something that's really important to me. As I like to say, what brings me the most joy is having purpose and feeling like I'm contributing to a legacy of love. And you've helped contribute to that. So that's the background of it. We have wonderful programs with you that I'll let you kind of, expand on if you want. But I said earlier that the content's bifurcated into two groups, one for professionals and one for the general public. We have a master class with you called The Art of Group Facilitation and the Power of Presence, which is a masterpiece that you delivered for us, that people can view on the website now if they're interested. And then we have a series that we recorded late last year that's been in post-production this year, which will be out probably this December. Code name Conscious Recovery, the complete series.
Mm.
And I consider it, as someone who's read all your books and seen all your programs, I would describe it as the most complete expression of your work and the best rendition of it. And so I think that there's an incredible amount of value for anyone finding themselves with addiction or in need of a higher quality recovery, or a family member or anyone who wants to understand the human condition of trying to escape from pain on repeat and making a shift to something toward healing for them. Um, it's something I'm very proud to have been part of, and I'm really grateful that we were able to make it together.
Oh my gosh. I love that name and I love that I'm hearing it for the first time here. That's so cool. I love it. I love it. And as you were telling the story about the person watching on the phone, I'm just reminded of the deeper purpose. Like you, it's easy to get into like sort of the mode of like, I wrote three books. They each have workbooks or a series of workbooks, and then they became courses through Wholehearted. And then I go do trainings, and I'm in the zone speaking at conferences. And then I have those moments where, like I go to a treatment program, and like that young woman had conscious recovery with all the little earmarks in it, and she said, "You have no idea how this changed my life. This is my, I think, fifth time in treatment." And to hear someone say, "I'm not a broken person, but there's a place within me that's still whole." And she just became very tearful. And I'm reminded of why, the deeper why. And I appreciate you for saying yes to your why, because it's been a lot of years. You started it right before COVID, and then all of that happened, and we had to go into a small studio, and we did what we did. And I think we created some amazing things and waited patiently for the city of Sacramento and the state of California to allow us in a bigger venue. And so we've been on this really interesting journey, and a reminder of the why is so important. As we move kind of toward the end of the conversation, I wanted to ask you if there were any moments where you got your own personal why. I mean, I remember multiple times like being in the studio with Jeremy Miller and recording and seeing you in the chair with the clipboard, right? And you're directing and producing. And I know there have been a couple of moments where I saw you hear or feel something, and it just inspired me because not only did it remind me of the why we're doing the work, because I always imagine someone through the camera receiving this information, but I think our own resonation, like resonating with the material, is so important. And I wonder if there's anything you'd be willing to share about that.
Sure, a couple of things. Let's call this like a handful of things I learned from TJ. One thing is that I learned from you is presence is more important than performance.
Mm,
So just being there, not trying to think about what you're going to say next or how you're going to respond to somebody, whether you're a family member or a friend or you're a professional, so much can happen if you're just present. One of my favorite things that you said while delivering the Artie Group Facilitation Master class is you said, as professionals, people are really concerned that one of their clients is going to relapse. They're often terrified of that. But that if the person isn't able to experience the pain or the discomfort, then they can't get used to it,
mm,
or familiar with it. They can't grow from it. That's what's causing the relapse, often. And one thing you said is, if we can just sit with them presently for just 2 minutes, that may be the longest they ever sat with it. And honestly, there are parts of myself that I have pushed down or looked away from that I've not wanted to look at for 2 minutes. But what I learned through you is, well, when I gain the courage to look at them honestly, um, yeah, there's some shame that comes up. But if I stick with it, I start to develop some self-compassion. And that self-compassion has been the golden ticket to deeper relationships, being a better friend, being a better son, being the person I want to be in the world. So yeah, you've helped with that for me, and I think that's something anybody can gain from learning from you, listening to you. And you have so much stuff that you put out on YouTube for free and on Instagram, and you have your books and programs. So it's not like everything is behind a paywall to learn from you. I'd also say what I alluded to earlier, and you repeat often as part of your teaching, is what we identify initially as a problem really is a solution. And so, along with the self compassion, I think when someone's doing something that's upsetting you and you want to say, stop it, it might also be beneficial to look at it and say, what I'm calling a problem might be their strategy. And maybe I might take the time to look at myself or others and ask the question of why. Why am I doing something, or why is something happening? And if you can look at behaviors as a solution to pain or an escape from pain, you can have an insight into it. You might have an insight into it that the other person may not have. And that puts you on a path of openness and curiosity and healing which is far more productive than shaming and blaming people or just wishing it would go away or stuffing it down. What
Wow.
else have I learned from you?
Uh, well, I mean, I
I could
love
keep
that.
going, but
No, I love that. And I also, before I forget, and then, you can finish if you want, but before I
sure.
forget, you said you described addiction as an escaping from pain on repeat.
Yeah.
I love that. I don't know if I've ever heard it articulated in that way. And it was in my mind, and then we moved on, but I wanted to come back to that because how many times do people say, what is addiction? What's your definition? And some of it can be so clinical. But I think what you just said is so real, escaping from pain on repeat. And that was my story from the time I was 7 years old until look at now look even we're getting the thumbs up even though we tried to turn it off before. I love that. Something's there, something's important about that. It must be. But just that simple definition I'm going to use. I'll give you credit, but I love it.
Well, one of the things that I do like that I prefer is I like to write versus talk, stumbling over my own words, is I'm a ghost author for a lot of different people. Not for you, but for different people
Hey, but
that I've
if you
worked
want to be
with.
the ghostwriter for my first book, go please take it.
Uh, so I like words. And when I look at the word like relapse, it's relapse. You're doing it again. It's a lapse and a re. It's in the word. And so when I look at it, same as recovery. Like, what are you recovering? You're recovering yourself. You're recovering your authentic self. And so there's all these interesting kind of re words, and so that's what occurs to me. Just look at it for what it is. Um, Trying to think like the other piece that I've taken away from that I really appreciate is you bring a nice balance because you have such a varied background in that healing requires compassion, but it also requires responsibility. And there's a trend of people in the field that I've noticed, and I'm not here to critique, I've just noticed that they identify someone's, trauma or adverse experiences that happen to a person, and they want to say, that's why this person is doing this. And maybe it can be that simple, but I don't think it is. I think that like I said, if people have their basic needs met, they're going to develop in certain predictable ways. And if they don't, they're going to develop in certain predictable ways. Um, and so I've always appreciated that is part of your work is that you've given people the tools for personal responsibility and agency over their own recovery, over their own healing. And it doesn't mean that you do this alone because we heal in connection, we heal with support, but it also gives people permission to be in charge of their own recovery, to develop a sense of agency and self-efficacy. The more awareness you develop, the more in charge you are. You can control the outcome in some ways. And that's real power. And so I'll go on a limb and say, I don't understand the powerlessness message as much as I do the powerful message. Like, if you are recovering, that is hard work, and you did that.
Hmm.
And I think people deserve the praise and the recognition of that.
Oh, I
Um,
love that.
yeah. And I do want to, so there is something I do want to ask you about, which
Sure.
is, so I'll go on my little corny spiel, and then I'll kind of hand it off to you, and we can maybe wrap this up. But years ago, you mentioned the term unharmable, and I've heard you bring that up multiple times. And honestly, when I first heard it, I thought that's a cool word. I like it, but I didn't really understand what you meant by it. Um, my office is close to my house, so I often walk to work, and I like to listen to music or podcasts while I do that. And I was listening to a 90s hits playlist, and the song Hero by Mariah Carey came up. And this was maybe a year ago. I might have even texted you when this happened. I'm not sure. But I pulled up the lyrics because I wanted to read them. Um, and uh, the lyrics are, let me see if I can find it. I thought I pulled it up. I lied. Well, that's my mistake. I mean, you can edit this out. Oh, here we go. All right. You can edit this if you want to. So the verse in the chorus is um, if you look into your heart, you don't have to be afraid of what you are. There's an answer. If you reach into your soul, and the sorrow that you know will melt away. And then a hero comes along with the strength to carry on, and you cast your fears aside and you know you can survive. So when you feel like hope is gone, look inside you and be strong, and you'll finally see the truth that a hero lies in you.
Hmm.
And we said earlier that we don't necessarily always heal alone. We heal with connection. But I think that can also be expanded to the connection to your authentic self, to the hero that's in that unharmable place in your heart. And we talked a lot about wholehearted, and what I never said was what wholehearted the word means to me, which is an integration of all of our parts, all the parts that we push down or try to run away from, holding them in one place. And that connection to your own authenticity, to your own experience, to integrating all those parts, I think is crucial to the transformation and healing process. So, my question for you is, am I missing anything about that? And is how can the message behind TJ Woodward conscious recovery and unharmable, how can I be a better vessel or advocate for what you're doing?
Oh my gosh, thank you, AJ. Well, first of all, absolutely. I think you are spot on with it. What the history of this is, we were in COVID times, and somewhere in the late summer, early fall, my colleague, Jeremy Miller, our colleague, our friend, one of my closest friends, Jeremy Miller, asked me the question, because someone said, "What makes your books a trilogy?" Because I don't see how they're a trilogy. It may have even been you, AJ. You said that someone on your team asked that question, right? And so I sat with that, and within about 30 seconds, what came through is that the core principle of all three of my books, and therefore sort of the foundation of my teaching, is that underneath all of our behavior, all of our thoughts, beyond our body, beyond our emotions, there is a place within us that is unharmed and unharmable. And when I said it, I realized that I wanted to spread the message of unharmable. And we actually launched it on 10/10/2020. I think part of it because we thought it was clever. 10/10/2020, we launched it. So 5 years ago. And we held that it would be something at some point. It's been kind of lying dormant. I do have the URL unharmable.com. I did trademark unharmable, which is just sort of the like logistics of it. But the essence of it was or and is that I saw people, regardless of their life experience. So, a person working on Wall Street, a person living under a underpass, that there was a sense that they were fundamentally flawed or broken. And this message that is so simple and yet radically profound in other ways is that there is this place within us that has never been harmed. So, no matter what I've done, because we talk a lot of times about the impact of trauma, of what happened to us, but I think we don't talk about the shame that I have felt from the things I have done. Right. I think healing the harm I've caused in the world has been more difficult than the harm that's happened to me. For some reason, I found it easier to forgive others than to forgive myself. And that has been such a big journey. And I discovered something so simple, and that is when I believed I was broken, I acted broken. I caused harm in the world. I stole, I harmed, I gossiped, all the things that I did were coming from this belief. And it was way more than a belief. It was like this deep sense of like, I don't care what anyone says. I am broken. I am damaged. It was like an identity and a badge of honor almost. And I realized that as I came into recovery and therapy and spiritual teaching, the deepest surrender that I had to make, and I use that term had to in my own journey. No one has to do anything, but I came to a place where I realized I had to, not only if I wanted to survive, but if I wanted to thrive. And that place was, what if there's still this place within me that's unharmed and unharmable? What if underneath all my stuff, I came into the world as a whole and perfect being and that's still who I am? What would knowing that create? What would that change in my life? And then I started really asking bigger questions like, what would that change in the world? What would that change in the world if instead of posting something that was oppositional to someone who I perceive to be different because they have a different viewpoint or they're part of a different political party or a different religion or their skin color is different or they have a different orientation, like all the ways we see the world is different. What if I were to look for the place within them that is precious? And I just started realizing like how simple and yet how powerful it is. So that message of unharmable is one that I'm ready to, I think it's ready to be born in a new and different way. So I think it's interesting that we're talking about this. I appreciate the question because that's the simple message, right? It's not about the addiction. It's not about what happened. It's not about what I've done. It's this essential belief and deeper than that, this like frequency of I'm broken versus this frequency of, oh my gosh, no, I'm actually whole and complete underneath all of that. That's the difference between power and force, right? I forced my way through the world to prove to the world I was worthy, to prove to the world I was lovable. But the deeper work was realizing that that's always been true. And then that's true power. And that means all of us have access to this power. So thank you for asking that. I appreciate it, AJ.
Love that. Thank you. 'Cause what I hear is things happen to people, like they call it adversity, right? And that can leave a scar. We call that trauma.
Yeah,
And that trauma, that scar is kind of like a scratch on the lens. And so if you're looking through the lens, you're going to project that everywhere. And you think that that's how the world is or how you see yourself. But if you have the opportunity to heal that scar, that emotional functioning that's been narrowed because of the trauma, and you remove that scratch, you can see yourself in a whole different light and see others in a different light. And if you can see others in a different light, and we all do that together, there's more healing space held for everybody.
that's right.
Um, and I
Wow.
appreciate that you contribute to that. For me, in closing, um, I just want to say that I've I always was curious what I would end up doing with my life. Like I said, my background was in finances and other things. But I can't say that I know for certain what my life's purpose is, but Hornet.org has been built with incredible friends and people like you and people that I love have helped pull this all together. So all I want to say is you've helped me find my purpose. So thank you for helping me live on purpose. And while I don't know if this is my life's purpose, it feels pretty close, and that's good enough for me. So
Oh my gosh.
thank you so much for you're a more influential part of my life than you probably know. So
Oh,
with much love, thank you.
oh my gosh. Thank you. Wow. What a beautiful conversation, AJ. I love you. I appreciate you. Everyone who's watching, AJ's full bio and more information about wholehearted.org will be in the show notes. And I also want to close just expressing gratitude to you, AJ, because, I know there have been moments where I can't even imagine that you've kept going with all the different things that have happened. And I've been a part of that, at least, sometimes intimately, sometimes from a distance, but just continuing to say yes to this calling to help people in this way is profound to me. So thank you. Everyone who's watching or listening, you know what to do. If this episode has meant something to you, or if something AJ has said or I have said resonates with you and you think it might with someone in your life, please share the episode, like and subscribe. And as always, thank you everyone for tuning in. Peace and blessings, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Element Q podcast. It's an honor to walk this path of healing and transformation with you. Remember, the courage and resilience of those who came before us live on in each of us. Let's continue to carry their legacy forward as we support one another in creating a world filled with love, gentleness, and empowerment. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast with someone who needs to hear it. Together, we're building a brighter future, one story at a time. Until next time, I'm TJ Woodward, and this has been the Element Q podcast.